Hey guys, Wasserk here, just making a little video about my what I call third and fourth generation VHS camcorders. So I've done quite a bit of work with these cameras, made a couple videos. So first, just a little bit of background. The reason I call these third and fourth generation VHS camcorders is that in my opinion there were two generations previously. The first generation was a separate VCR and a separate video camera unit. Very primitive. A portable VCR would be mounted on a belt or something like that, and then a cable would be running to a video camera, and the video camera would have strictly manual functions such as zoom and then white balance and focus. And the second generation were camcorders like as seen in Back to the Future, full-size VHS and then VHS-C, which you didn't need a separate VCR for, but still had manual settings like white balance and focus and all of that. And I consider these to be the third generation because this all has basically automatic functions. It has automatic white balance, autofocus, and power zoom. And then, like the second generation, these do work as a VCR. Then this is my 1987 Sylvania. This is basically a clone of a Panasonic model of the similar era, which was, I believe, introduced in 1985. So the third generation of cameras will be right around 1985 to 1988. And this particular camera, I've done a lot of stuff with this. If you want to see a full-length video with this particular camera, just make sure to check out my vintage range day video. So this particular camera I've had for about 12 years. I got this with the case and accessories. Had to get a new battery for it at the time, and then more recently had to get a new battery. But this is a pretty good camera for the era. It's a copy of a Panasonic. A good thing about this camera is that instead of a lot of other versions, such as there'd be RCA cameras or cameras made by Sears or Montgomery Ward, this is a heavily gear-driven camera. The other cameras, even though they were around the same price, about $1,000 in the 1980s, used a lot of belts, and over time the belts will perish and get all ugly and nasty. So for its time, this is a pretty sophisticated piece of equipment. As you can see, all the functions there. And it has an electronic viewfinder, black and white viewfinder, which is basically a miniature TV. So I've done extensive stuff with this particular camera. I've got the battery in this one, so let me show you what I'm talking about as far as the gears on the inside. This is a very complex piece of electronic equipment for its time. This is about $2,500 in today's money. The one that I like about this camera is it's got a cool servo sound when you open up the tape mechanism. And as you can see in there, it's a marvel of engineering for its time. Lots of little gears and stuff inside there. You can see the head on the inside of that. This is a very well-built camera, but this is a third generation camera, and it does have some limitations compared to the next camera that I'm going to show you, the Panasonic. Let's get that lens there. And just a very, very cool camera, and I was very fortunate to be able to get this camera with the case and the keys and everything for around $30 about 12, 13 years ago. And it even has the foam windscreen shield still on there. Most of the time that will have deteriorated. Let's go ahead and take a look at the other side here. Again, this is basically like the iPhone of its time, more expensive in today's money. So again, a third generation camera, but it does have some limitations compared to the fourth generation camera, which I will be showing next. And then there is a shot of the bottom of the camera. Want to make sure to get everything. And then just a quick view of the back showing the various ports and the battery compartment, which I'm lucky enough that both cameras share the same battery and the same charger slash video input box thing. And right there's a function for a remote control where it has a long wire connected to a remote, so you can set your camera up on a tripod and not have to physically go to the camera to do multiple takes. Alright, and here is my fourth generation VHS camcorder. Now, compared to the Sylvania, which again is a clone of Panasonic, this definitely has some upgraded features. I believe these styles models came around 1988 or 1989. This particular one is a February 1990, and it definitely has some upgrades over the previous generation of cameras. The biggest one being is that it has this speaker here, so when you want to review tape, looking through the electronic viewfinder, little black and white TV screen, you actually can review the sound as well, and you can dub over that actually with this camera, which is pretty cool. So it definitely has a few upgraded features, as you can see here, especially this feature right here, the iris feature, and then just definitely has a couple upgraded features versus the Sylvania. Now this still has an autofocus and power zoom, and actually has a macro setting, which is pretty neat. And unlike the Sylvania, on the electronic viewfinder you have a little brightness dial. You have a wind noise reduction function, and then if you can see by the light switch, you can actually plug in a light to this camera, and I think it's got what's called a hot shoe mount on top, so you can have an extra microphone or whatever. This right here is for what's called a character generator. Back in the day, if you wanted to put text over video, you would have to use what's called a character generator, and it's a little keyboard type thing that plugs into this port. I thought about getting one of those, but I'm able to do text over video just with my editing software, so I mean it's cool, but I can get a vintage enough text overlay with that. Let's look at the back of the camera. So pretty similar to the Sylvania. Again, these use the same battery and charger thing, so that's really cool. And the biggest thing I love about this camera is that speaker, so it makes it easier for me to review footage before I have to edit. And it's got your standard fare, the VCR settings right here. Like with the Sylvania, you can dub over stuff that you've already recorded. Now let's just open it up real quick and show you what the guts look like. Again, this is one of the fantastic gear-driven versus belt-driven designs. So usually that means if you find one of these cameras, all you'll need to do is slap a battery into it and it should work. Fortunately, this one, the foam windscreen is long gone. So let me just eject the tape. Yeah, so this one ejects a lot faster. And this camera also powers up and down a lot faster, which I will show in just a minute. So we'll remove the tape. And let's take a look at those beautiful guts. Look at all the little gears and levers and stuff in there. This is a very high grade piece of electronic equipment, what I would call prosumer. It's not a studio TV camera, but this isn't the cheapo Montgomery Ward Sears brand either. Panasonic, in my opinion, is top of the line when it comes to these camcorders. So let's close that up, and then we can show the other side of this beauty. As you can see, that port right there is for mounting the light that goes up on top. It's got they made a halogen light for this camera, and it does receive power from the camera. So, and then there's, like the Sylvania, is an option for an external microphone if you want better sound quality. But as far as I'm concerned, these cameras have pretty good sound quality. It's mono, but it's still pretty good. I'm not sure if I'm going to experiment with stereo sound. So a cool feature about this camera is, unlike the Sylvania, which is the earlier Panasonic models, you can either record from up here or back here with your thumb, which is really convenient when you've got the hand strap on here. So definitely an improvement on the previous generation of camera. And then the lens appears different, more like a professional looking lens. The Sylvania has a round lens, and this one has like more of an oblong shape. So like on the Sylvania, this right here is the IR sensor for the autofocus. These are just fascinating pieces of equipment. And I just love the aesthetic of VHS. I know you can use filters and stuff, but it's really not that much effort to actually film with VHS now. And I've been lucky enough to get a whole stack of blank tapes. And then here is the box that I use to digitize stuff. There's AV cables right there. I go back into my computer, into my capture card, and then I use OBS to digitize my footage. Now the Sylvania and the Panasonic can both use this box right here. So this is the battery charger, and then if you want to view the footage on a TV, you can either use this box, or there's an adapter that you can hook into the back of both cameras and just hook straight into the TV, but then you're using power from your camera battery, which is this big old brick right here. But you can still find these. These are about $30, so if you get a good deal on the camera, batteries aren't too expensive. So now I will do a quick demonstration of how long it takes each camera to power up, and just show you that these cameras both do work. All right, here is the 1987 Sylvania. You can hear that beautiful hum of the machinery in there. I love that sound. There's the power button, and then the standby, I guess, if you want to conserve your battery power. So we'll just do a quick tape eject. Very cool. That's it, getting the tape back into position. All right, then here is the 1990 Panasonic as used in my Bosnia Tour 94 video. Let's go ahead and power it on. So it powers on pretty quick versus the Sylvania, which is nice. Let's eject the tape. So pretty quick, albeit violent ejection. And then it's loading up the tape. And then power it off. Let's power it on one more time so we can get that delightful hum. Let's get in nice and close so you can hear that. Lovely, lovely sound, if that comes through on camera. And let's just show you that the autofocus feature. Yeah, there we go. You can see that working. So very, very cool. So hopefully you guys like the video. Again, if you're not into camcorders, I highly recommend getting into them. They're just fascinating pieces of technology. And if you're lucky, you won't spend too much money to get them. So just make sure to like, comment, subscribe, and share. Thanks for watching.